Good evening. Welcome to this press conference at the end of the Eurogroup meeting. We have with us today Kyriakos Pyrakakis, President of the Eurogroup, Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis, Commissioner for the Economy, Productivity, Implementation and Simplification, and Pierre Gramegna, Managing Director of the ESM. We will hear their statements first and then open the floor for questions. President.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. Expectations for a rapid de-escalation of the crisis in the Middle East have not been confirmed. This is the difficult reality we're facing, and we must address it with realism and responsibility. Uncertainty remains. Developments are already affecting the European economy. Energy prices, inflation, and growth. Citizens feel the pressure in their daily lives, especially the most vulnerable amongst them. The same applies to businesses trying to operate in a highly demanding environment. Our responsibility towards them is to be prepared even for the most difficult scenarios, such as a prolonged disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, which could further intensify pressure and slow down economic activity. We are addressing this issue as European governments in close coordination, including with our colleagues from outside the euro area, building on recent Eurogroup discussions, and we will continue to monitor it systematically. European coordination in such critical matters is an essential prerequisite. Despite the challenges, Europe has a strong starting point. The euro area has demonstrated its resilience. Inflation was close to target before this latest shock, and our labour market remains robust with historically low unemployment. This is our foundation, and on this foundation we're building with planning, with consistency and with responsibility. Member States have already taken measures to support citizens and businesses. We are acting in a coordinated manner with a common denominator, as defined by the Commission, that these measures must be targeted, temporary and in line with the fiscal rules we have agreed upon, and also consistent with the objectives of the green transition. In a context of successive crises, maintaining this balance is not easy, but it is absolutely necessary. In this direction, we had a particularly substantive discussion with Oya Tselasun, Deputy Director of the European Department of the IMF. The IMF recognizes Europe's positive starting point, but stresses that the effects of the crisis are not evenly distributed. Net energy importers and economies with limited fiscal space obviously face greater pressure. This obliges us to act with caution, with well-designed and with targeted policies. It was therefore very revealing to learn from the IMF that around 70% of the total cost of the measures we took in 2022 were either not targeted or distorted prices, or both. Worse still, when it comes to the current energy shock, in making an assessment, the IMF notes that 33% of electricity subsidies have the potential, if the measures are untargeted, of going to the 20% of the population, compared to 11% for the poorest 20%. The gap is even bigger when it comes to transport fuel subsidies. 34% have the potential of going to the richest households and only 9% to the poorest, again, if the measures are untargeted. The IMF also reminded us that energy efficiency gains and the cleaner energy mix have made Europe more resilient. European households have gained 12% less cost thanks to greater efficiency and the shift towards renewables over the past 5 years. The EU and Member States are decisively strengthening our strategy to become energy independent. In recent years, we have reduced our dependence on fossil fuels. However, current developments showcase that we must accelerate. We're investing in electricity interconnectors, clean energy sources, and European energy networks. And in this context, the European Commission's Accelerate EU plan is an important step forward. At the same time, the stability of our financial system remains critical, and in the hearing with Claudia Bauch, Chair of the SSM, and the update of Dominique Labouret, Chair of the SRB, it was confirmed that the European banking sector is resilient. However, there is no room for complacency. Banks must be prepared for an environment of heightened uncertainty and of rapid technological change. And for this reason, we decided to kick off a discussion on AI at today's meeting. Frontier AI models are evolving rapidly and may soon present challenges of a potentially systemic nature, and we must ensure a framework that supports both stability and competitiveness. We also extended our discussion to the issue of cross-border banking activity with the contribution of Slavomir Krupa, the President of the European Banking Federation. The consolidation of the European banking sector is a prerequisite for strength. It may lead to better allocation of capital and liquidity, stronger risk diversification and economies of scale. Scale that could spur banks in the EU to catch up with international peers in investments in new technologies. I believe that consolidation in the banking sector will translate into greater stability, greater competitiveness, and more choices for citizens. And this is an effort that we will continue, including on the basis of the European Commission's forthcoming report. The same logic of improved competitiveness and more citizens' choice applies to the Capital Markets Union. In our discussion with Georg Kukis, former German Minister of Finance, and Christian Noyer, former Governor of the Bank of France, we examined the recommendations of their report on financing innovative enterprises. Better access to private capital, reforms to supplementary pension system, the creation of a 28 regime for company law, all those are key conditions to strengthen growth and to strengthen innovation in Europe. We will return to assess progress on these initiatives in October. The Eurogroup is also advancing work on digital finance. We took stock of the progress made at the technical level in recent months and agreed on next steps, with a view to adopting a common European policy stance in July. Europe is operating in an environment of continuous and complex challenges. Our response must be coherent, steady, and decisive, with responsible fiscal policy, accelerated energy transition, deeper financial integration, and investment in innovation and in the digital economy. The resilience that we have managed to build so far is the foundation. The next step is to turn this resilience into strength, into growth, into competitiveness for Europe, for its citizens. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Kyriakos. Good evening, everyone. Let me begin with the European Commission's assessment of the economic outlook. As a result of the war in the Middle East, energy prices have surged, with oil surpassing $125 per barrel last week. Higher energy prices affect every actor in the European economy, firms and families alike. They are pushing the EU onto the path of weaker growth and higher inflation. Its direct effects are being compounded by declining confidence, tighter financing conditions, and softer external demand. The overall economic impact will depend on how the conflict evolves, particularly its implications on energy supplies and infrastructure. On a more positive note, our economies are now better prepared to absorb the energy shock than in 2022. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we have diversified our natural gas supplies and rapidly deployed renewables. Still, the overall outlook remains highly uncertain. The Commission will present more detailed projections in our spring economic forecast later this month. Turning now to the policy response, it is clear that the war will have serious consequences for Europe's public finances, and sound public finances are our asset to maintain macroeconomic stability in an unpredictable and challenging world. Our room for maneuver is already more limited today on account of higher deficit and debt levels, a higher interest rate environment, and urgent need for additional defense spending. So we simply cannot afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. It is essential, therefore, that any support measures are temporary, targeted, and do not increase aggregate energy demand. And that was also the message reiterated by IMF representative at today's meeting. Our first assessment of measures taken by member states so far shows that they could do better in targeting them at those most impacted. The Accelerate EU communication adopted by the Commission last month provides examples of well-designed policies in line with these principles. They can help cushion the impact of energy crisis on vulnerable consumers, households, and energy-intensive companies while minimizing fiscal costs. The communication also promotes coordination measures in areas such as filling gas storage facilities, exceptional releases of oil stocks, and the adaptation of national measures. Moving briefly to other items in today's agenda, the inability to scale innovative companies into global champions is one of the EU's economy's biggest structural weaknesses. Today we held a good discussion on improving financing conditions for our businesses on the basis of financing innovative ventures in Europe report. It is clear that we must complete our single market and advance savings and investments union agenda to establish the conditions for our companies to grow and prosper. Finally, we heard insightful presentations from the chairs of the Single Supervisory Mechanism and a Single Resolution Board. The Commission is determined to maintain the resilience and competitiveness of our banks, also in the face of evolving and sophisticated cybersecurity threats. We'll work closely with all stakeholders to achieve this objective. And to that end, our consultation on the competitiveness of the European banking sector closed on April 19th, and we will present our findings in a report on the competitiveness of the EU banking sector later this year. Thank you.
Mr. Kamenia.
Good evening, everyone. Let me first start by congratulating the President, Pierrakakis, for putting on the agenda today the important issue of digital finance. These discussions are extremely useful in building a shared understanding of how digitalization will fundamentally transform our financial system. We are fully engaged as ESM in this work, including also in our role as an issuer on financial markets. Digital finance is becoming an essential element to ensure Europe's strategic autonomy and financial stability over the long term. So this work is key, and discussion today paved the way for the statement that is being prepared for July. On banking union, we had the pleasure to have the chairs of the Single Supervision Mechanism and of the Single Resolution Board with us, Claudia Bourg and Dominique Laboret. They underlined that it is important to ensure that banks are sound and can be resolved effectively in a crisis. This is particularly critical for Europe's resilience in today's volatile environment and in times of geopolitical turmoil. In parallel, Europe faces very large investment needs, and the public sector can meet only part of it. In fact, the essential role is played by financial investments from the private sector. In this context, cross-border consolidation in the banking sector is about Europe's ability to finance its own priorities and strengthen its strategic autonomy. Large cross-border banking groups can help channel savings towards productive investment. They can offer pan-European investment products, help develop securitization through more diversified assets, and better support companies operating across borders. At the same time, we should keep in mind the lessons from the great financial crisis. It is important to remember that larger and more complex banking groups can become too big to fail and create risks across borders. This is why we need to make sure that our safety net is complete. This includes the ESM backstop to the Single Resolution Fund, a credible arrangement for liquidity in resolution, and European Deposit Insurance Scheme, EDIS. Last but certainly not least, the conflict in the Middle East. Let me conclude with those remarks. In recent weeks, the reaction of markets appeared overly optimistic, but as the progress in reopening the Strait of Hormuz has stalled, oil prices have moved up again. And sovereign spreads in the euro area are also widening, although less than in March. We know that even if the conflict were resolved in the near term, its economic after effects would last longer than the conflict itself. If markets reprice more abruptly, financial conditions will weigh further on growth and stretch already limited policy space for governments. This is why countries need to remain disciplined and keep measures temporary, targeted and tailored, as discussed today in the Eurogroup. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With this, we look forward to your questions. Please state your name and the media you're working for. We go first here to Elena, please.
Thank you. Elena Apostolidou from Greek Public Broadcaster. Is there any consideration on the table for temporary measures not to count towards the spending rule? And my second question, is stagflation here? Thank you.
Maybe let's start with the second question. Indeed, what Europe is facing is a stagflationary shock, meaning slowdown of economic growth with simultaneous increase in inflation. So that's exactly the scenario which we are finding ourselves. Also, if you look at the latest inflation flash estimates published last Thursday, it puts inflation at 3.0% in Eurozone, and it's driven primarily by a surge in energy prices, which have increased 10.9% year on year. But as I was saying, we will be publishing our spring economic forecast later this month, so coming with more detailed assessment on the impact of this war on the economy and also country-by-country analysis. On terms of policy response, so we had this discussion today, and so the point we were making from European Commission side is the need to use existing flexibilities within the Stability and Growth Pact and let also automatic stabilizers work, which are there and allowing for certain, so to say, fiscal accommodation even before discretionary measures by member states kick in. But the need for discretionary measures is to keep them temporary and targeted, so while respecting existing medium-term fiscal structural plans of the member states. But of course, we continue monitoring the situation from European Commission side and stand ready, in a sense, to adjust this policy response as necessary.
I mean, reiterating upon what the Commissioner just said, we are in a stagflationary tendency, meaning that we are updating our projections for growth downwards and for inflation upwards, but we're not in full stagflation mode at this point. Having said that, the perimeter of the measures advanced by the Commission and also analyzed by the IMF showcase the true value of having measures that fit into those categories, which we repeat continuously, the temporary, targeted and tailored. But once you have the IMF making a presentation and outlining with corroborated data that if you have targeted measures, horizontal measures, they effectively help the rich much more than the poor, bluntly, this is an interesting policy lesson for all of us sitting in the room and corroborates the position of the European Commission when they're advancing that scope and that set of measures. Similarly, when the IMF is underlining that we have a net gain with regards to the impact from everything that we have done with regards to our long-run strategic priorities on energy, given what we have done after 2022, we have a 12% reduction of the impact compared to what it would have been had we not diversified, had we not made the requisite energy investments. One understands the perimeter of the acceptable measures that we should be taking. You're asking about the fiscal rules. Given where we are right now, this is the position that we should take. If the situation changes, obviously one reconsiders. But if the situation changes, the headline is that the situation has worsened. So in this regard, what we're doing right now is absolutely commensurate with the spirit and of the will of the fiscal measures that we have put in place.
Paola, in the back, please. Yes.
Thank you. To the Commissioner, first of all, has anybody in the EU or the ECB or the SSM made a request to Anthropic for access to Mythos? And what has been the response, if that has happened? And to President Pirakakis, you have said that you are acting in line with the recommendations, but the IMF says that 2/3 of the measures are untargeted, and the Commissioner has also just said that you could do much better. So what are you doing to keep your fellow ministers in check? Thanks.
On the first question, indeed, there are contacts with Anthropic. Also, the Commission representatives met with Anthropic and was briefed on technical details around cyber capabilities and risk of this Mythos preview. So we are currently assessing possible implications in light of the EU policies and legislation. And it's clear that in light of unprecedented capabilities claimed for this Mythos model, of course, currently there are restrictions on how this rollout is taking place, but we are engaged with the discussions of the representatives also as regards possibility for European companies and notably banking sector to have possibilities for this cyber resilience testing.
I will answer the second question, which was directly addressed to me, but I will also touch upon the first one as well. With regards to the second, part of the answer is exactly what we're doing here today, is bringing over the IMF, bringing over the European Commission, and having an honest assessment of the measures. We asked for the assessment. And learning from that and understanding the exact impact and the exact orchestration of fiscal policy together with monetary policy, I think, is part of the answer. I would also add that this is not a black and white debate. You don't fit the measures in category A or category B per se. Certain measures can be, for instance, horizontal, but they might be temporary rather than have a more permanent nature once you're imposing them. So all those things should be integrated in the calculus of the finance ministers, who are cognizant of what works and what doesn't work better in the short run and in the long run, and being orchestrated has a premium by itself. Now, with regards to the first question, I think that treating the topic of Mythos Anthropic independently would be wrong in the following sense, because you can have other language models to be developed quite soon and at equal capabilities. It's a broader debate, thus, that needs to be made about technological sovereignty, about governance, about interacting with our American peers, but not only, and how to establish the requisite mechanisms. Integrating technological governance and technological sovereignty debates within the context of the Eurogroup is one of the priorities that we plan to address as well in the coming meetings, and this will certainly interact with elements like AI governance in our view. And this is part of the ask, of the request that I have received from many of my colleagues.
Then we move now to Sabina.
I have a follow-up on the question on the flexibility on fiscal rules, in particular for Commissioner Dombrovskis. May I ask your assessment on the proposal by the Italian finance minister to extend or to apply the NEC for the defense also for the energy crisis? He shared his speech held during the Eurogroup meeting, so apparently this is what he has asked. What is your opinion? Thank you.
Well, indeed. Actually, I also met Minister Giorgetti earlier today to discuss these issues, and the point was raised also during the Eurogroup meeting. It must be said that different member states voiced different opinions on the appropriate fiscal policy response. So we will obviously continue to work closely with member states, including Italy, on developing this fiscal policy response. But as I was mentioning, so for a time being, our advice is to stick with those temporary targeted measures with limited fiscal impact.
And then Jorge.
Thank you very much, Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. Coming back to Mythos, and as you say, President of the Eurogroup, the precedent that actually could set for other models that have been developed. The fact is that we know at least for 1 month the risk posed by this new model. And the problem is that not only no EU bank has access to Mythos, but even there is no reliable information about the risks that this model represents. And we're talking about, the wealthiest single market in the world. So what does this say? The fact that we don't even have access to information about the EU, when we already faced similar issues with our energy exposure or dependency, defense, and now it's technology. So do you think that the EU should use any of the instruments available? For example, Minister Cuerpo spoke about AI Act, or to access this on a voluntary basis, or even to force the company to facilitate this model? Thank you.
In one phrase, I would say that we tend to over-dramatize the present and underestimate the future. And the future in technological innovation can be asymmetrically quicker than what we imagine it to be. That's why I mentioned that you can easily see other companies develop similar capabilities in terms of their LLMs quite quickly. The question here is how to have a very clear idea about our own technological capabilities. That's why I mentioned technological sovereignty for Europe is the core debate that we should have, and how not to be asymmetrically interdependent with other players once we have agreed upon our own strategy on technology. Now, the challenge here is that technologies like AI necessitate international governance frameworks at a moment where multilateralism is challenged. And I guess this is the nucleus behind your question. But having said this, I don't think that we have the luxury of not trying to establish channels of communication with the United States, both on this topic and on other topics as well, because frankly, the changes that we will see coming from AI are going to be significant. So part of the question is, will you have access to the specific LLM and the specific algorithm? Part of the question is, how strong are you in this debate in order to be able to participate in a non-asymmetric way in any technological discussion, be that on an LLM today or in any other type of technology tomorrow? And this is a topic that touches upon trade. It's a topic that touches upon everything, basically, in the context of the transatlantic relationship. This is why this question will be addressed by the Commission. It was announced today that we're in contact with the company, so hopefully this access will be obtained. But frankly, the more strategic question is what type of capabilities do we capacity build in the coming months and years to be able to be a much stronger part of the equation in any type of technological debate. This is exactly what it means to be technologically sovereign.
Yeah, maybe just to reiterate this point once again, as I was mentioning, so Commission representatives actually have met with Anthropic and were briefed on technical details around cyber capabilities and risks of Mythos, and given those capabilities and risk, currently Anthropic is limiting access to selected organizations to support system scanning and security, because obviously there are concerns about potential misuse, so that's why it's tightly controlled how this model is being used. But as Kyriakos was just mentioning, of course, AI is developing very rapidly, and there are other models which are developing and which may be months away from where Mythos is now. So it's also the question about our broader response there.
And then we have one final question, Thomas, Euractiv.
Thank you very much, Thomas Milnilson at Euractiv. I have two questions, if I may. So one for the Commissioner and the Eurogroup President about the possibility of windfall taxes. It was something that, with my German is, I'm not 100% sure about my German, but I'm pretty sure the German Finance Minister said he would mention this in the meeting today. Did he? And what is your view of it, Eurogroup President? And also for the Commissioner, is this something that the Commission could still potentially, I know that you've said that the Commission is considering it, but is this something that we could see sometime in the near future? And also another question for Managing Director Gromenia. I wasn't 100% clear when you said that some markets were initially over optimistic in their response to the Iran war. Are they still overly optimistic in your view? And another question about something that Andrew Bailey said last month. He said that he's worried about the possibility of a double whammy, whereby market volatility sort of coincides with another crisis, like in private credit, for instance. Is this something that you're also concerned about, or not? Thank you very much.
Yes, maybe to start, indeed, it's something Mr. Klingbeil mentioned during today's meeting, so the topic remains on agenda. So what we have outlined already in our Accelerate EU communications, that taxation of windfalls profits is a possibility. Member states can use it. We are currently not, so to say, foreseeing, recommending any European initiative. Our assessment is that, so to say, the previous application of windfall profit tax during the previous energy crisis has, well, produced mixed results, but if the member states are interested to implement them in a national level, certainly the possibility is there to do so.
I mean, I fully concur with Commissioner Dombrovskis on his answer. It's a national decision-making process to tax windfall profits, and it's a decision, I think, that should also be made in light of critical supply chains and our overall energy sovereignty and capacity building our energy infrastructure in Europe.
Well, as you know, markets are always right. That's what they say themselves. And so I cannot read the future better than the markets. But what I can say is that in Washington, at the spring meeting of the IMF, it was striking that the market analysis was much more positive than the one of institutions, be it the IMF itself, be it the European Commission, be it lots of other participants, and that was, for me, a striking feature. That's why I mentioned it here in my speech, and it goes along with this tendency with the market to give more importance or maybe overvalue the good news and playing down the bad news. Now, unfortunately, with the continuation of the conflict and the most recent evolution and the stall in the Hormuz trade, the market itself has revised its position. So that's what I wanted to say. As European Stability Mechanism, we try to strike the right balance to have a sound judgment of what are the risks in terms of financial stability. So that's why we follow this very closely, and we are ourselves an actor in the markets as we issue bonds. So we try to be very attentive to what is said in the market and what is really happening, and we continue to analyze this on a regular basis.
Okay, this brings us to the end of the press conference. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.